Yeah, kind of certain things. I think, well, I've been past like this. I've not stopped. Okay. I've never stopped. I've never. So it is a kind of. Overpopulation. It's probably more like a higher poultry and livestock population. That does give some, yeah. Is it the cops or is it like a sheriff? I'm just wondering, because sometimes
which one need an extra card?
I got a figure. I guess I'm used to the road. I see her.
If you work. I don't know which one is that. Yeah.
Can you hear me? You can hear me? All right, is right here okay? Right here?
Hello everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for coming to Bennett College here on this Saturday. My name is Debbie Chamois. I'm an anchor for WFMY News 2 here in Greensboro. If we could give a round of applause to our two guests today, and welcome Dr. Cheryl Barber and Reverend Dr. William Warren.
I don't really know her.
I don't know.
How you
support women's education. We support HBCUs, and of course we support Bennett College. And as we know, things are up in the air right now with Bennett. So what we wanted to do today is kind of dive into the history of Bennett College, why Bennett College is important to the community, not only here in Greensboro, but also across the United States and across the world. So what we're going to do first is have a formal introduction, a formal welcome with President of Bennett College, Dr. Dawkins.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am Phyllis Worthy Dawkins. I'm the 18th president of Bennett College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this afternoon. Today is a special day at Bennett as we welcome home a phenomenal belle, Dr. Sherelle Barber, class of 2007. We also welcome the Reverend Dr. William Barber, 2018 Tar Heel of the Year, MacArthur Fellow, and most importantly, he is Sherelle's dad. Okay. We are honored that both of you are here with us to stand with Bennett. Thank you. I would also like to thank our event organizers, Trustee Andrea Harris, Chair Gladys Robinson, as well as alumni Yolanda Johnson and Crystal Saunders. Crystal is at Penn State, and she initiated this idea. And so I also like to recognize at the same time my trustee, Charlie Green. Please give them a round of applause. With all the alums in the room, please stand. All the alums in the room. Thank you. And please join them. All students, faculty, and staff, please stand. And all friends of the college, people that are standing with Bennett, please stand. Everybody. You all know that we are standing at a threshold. So much work has been done. We don't sleep at night. It's 24 hours, all day, all night. So many people have come to our aid, and for that we are very thankful. We are overwhelmed by the national, regional, and local outpouring of support. As of today, we've raised nearly $3 million. And we've got about $2 million to go, and we have to do it in 6 days. And guess what? We are going to do it. As difficult as this experience has been, we have learned some lessons. When you hit hard times, you find out who your true friends are. In Bennett College, we have some amazing friends. Amazing friends, such as the ones in the audience, the ones online, across the nation, and even across the world. You know, sometimes out of adversity, abundance can emerge. Sometimes out of strife, our blessings are born. It is through our struggles that we find our strength. Bennett community, as strange as it may sound, SAC-COC, removing us from membership, could be the catalyst that propels Bennett College to the next level. Continue to have courage and faith. I believe in Bennett's beloved community. And I know that with your support, we will surpass our $5 million goal. I thank you all for being with us today, and may God bless you. Thank you.
So coming up to the front right now is the Bennett College Ensemble, directed by Dorothea Taylor, who graduated 1999.
Good afternoon. The Bennett College Park Ambassador Ensemble is excited to share with you this afternoon Ella Song, which is written by Dr. Bernice Reagan Johnson Reagan, and the song is inspired by the words of Dr. Ella Baker.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest till the killing of black men, black mother sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mother sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. That which touches me most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail.
That's it.
And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest.
So next on our agenda is the introduction of the speakers, and coming up to the podium now is Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman. He's the president of the North Carolina chapter of the NAACP. He will be introducing to us Reverend William Barber to us this afternoon.
Good afternoon. To all of you, but most especially to the Bennett Bells, and I just really have to be honest that I really wanted to introduce Sherelle.
Amen.
But they told me to introduce her dad.
Yes, you did.
Her dad, who was born on August 30th, 1963. And The reason I mention that is because that was 2 days after the March on Washington for jobs. And I often say that his mother marked him. Some of you who are from the South know what we talk about when we talk about being marked at birth. And I believe that Dr. William J. Barber was marked at birth, and his mother did her yeoman's best to hold on to the babe that was in her womb to prevent him from running to Washington, D.C. to be there with Martin Luther King Jr. And she did a good job of holding on to him then. But as we know now, he is probably the foremost individual in our nation who has the ideology, the compassion of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we ought to be proud that we know him. Another story, and you can see that I've deviated from the printed bio here, and I hope that you all will forgive me for that, but I'm assuming that you all will be able to read it on your own. On May 24, 2011, which preceded the Moral Monday movement, I was minding my business in Raleigh, North Carolina. No, I was here in Greensboro, North Carolina.
That's right.
Where the North Carolina Association for Community Development Corporations conference was going on. I had been invited there by Sue Perry Cole. And Dr. Barber was the keynote speaker that day. Now, while I was serving at that time as his religious affairs chair, I was not as close to him as I grew to become close to him. After his message there here in Greensboro, he convinced me to travel and follow him to Raleigh, North Carolina, where we were going to engage with the General Assembly. I didn't know then that his last name could be taken literally, because I ended up getting a haircut by Barber on that day. I say that to say that we got arrested on that day after following him, minding my own business, and went to Raleigh to be with him. Because there, we addressed the General Assembly in the, what do you call that thing? No, not the rotunda, the gallery. In the gallery, and they put us out and took us to jail. I tried my best not to go, but I felt like I had to stay with him, and I did. And I'm so glad that I did. Once, when I was introducing him at a one-person, one-vote conference, this is what I said. I coined a term and said that Dr. William J. Barber II is perhaps a person who is blessed with what I called intense intuitivity. He has an uncanny, innate ability of being able to address matters and issues and dissect them in a number of different ways. And he's able to do that, I said, by C prime. C prime. He looks at the constitutionality of things. He looks at the practicality of things, the reality of things, the intersectionality of things, the morality of things, and the ethicality of things. That is Dr. William J. Barber II. My brother and my friend, who is my predecessor as the North Carolina State Conference of Branches President, NAACP. I love this family like you wouldn't believe, and Rebecca can tell you that, his wife. And Sherelle is the oldest of the siblings. She's the oldest. And when I met her, she wasn't a doctor, but she's a doctor now. That's my introduction.
Amen.
Coming up next, Alexis Branch, who is the president of the Bennett College Student Government Association, will be introducing Dr. Sherelle Barber.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Alexis Nicole Branch. I am a graduating senior political science major from Barber, Maryland, and I currently serve as the Student Government Association president here at Bennett College. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Sherelle Barber, class of '07. She is currently an assistant research professor in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics and the Urban Health Collaborative at the Dornside School of Public Health, Drexel University. She is also a faculty affiliate of the UCLA Center for the Study of Racism, Social Justice, and Health. Her research focuses on the intersection of place, race, and health, and examines the role of structural racism in shaping health and racial ethnic health inequalities among Blacks, and a particular focus on the southern United States and Brazil. To that end, she has conducted a series of empirical investigations in the Jackson Heart Study based in Jackson, Mississippi, and the Brazilian longitudinal study of adult health, a multi-site cohort study based in 6 urban centers across Brazil. Dr. Barber's research employs multi-level analysis and spatial techniques and draws heavily from theories that take a social ecological approach to understanding health and health inequalities. Ultimately, Dr. Barber hopes her research will inform the development of multi-level, multi-sector policies that will address the underlying structure determinants of the health through economic and social policy initiatives. Dr. Barber holds a Doctor of Science degree in Social Epidemiology from Harvard School of Public Health, a Master's of Public Health degree in Health Behavior and Health Education from the UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health, and a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from the illustrious Bennett College.
Illustrious Bennett College. Thank you.
All that you're studying, your research, very fascinating.
Thank you. We'll have to talk sometime about
yes,
it.
Please. So I'm going to do 2 different references because we have 2 Dr. Barbers in the house. So I'm going to reference Reverend Barber and Dr. Barber when I kind of bring the questions towards you guys. Okay. So let's start with you, Reverend Barber. You know, your daughter here graduated in 2007, 10 plus years ago. When you were making the decision on schools, why Bennett College?
Well, first of all, I might not be doing something right.
No, I don't think it's on.
We also have this. This is it.
Oh, that's for the video. Yeah. Testing. There we are. All right. First of all, let me thank God for being here today, and for all of the people who are here in the audience, for Andrea Harris making the request, and we've tweeted this out to, I know on my tweet alone, over 250,000 people, inviting them to join this conversation. And let me thank you for facilitating. Thank the President, thank Dr. Spearman, and all of you who gathered here today. Before I talk about that decision, I want to say that I'm just getting off the road for about 20 days. I buried my baby brother, preached his eulogy about 3 weeks ago. And I'm here today, and normally for the last few weeks I've not done anything from 2 to 5, because from 2 to 5 o'clock a few weeks ago, my mother was singing my brother to glory. She sang to him for 2 hours. All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall, bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all, and other hymns. But I thought it would be okay in his memory to break my protocol of meditation today, to be a part of continuing life and resurrection here at Bennett College.
Amen.
Maybe that's a part of that intuitiveness. So before I say anything about the decision, there are thousands of people who are going to see this online. And I believe that we can find 400 people across the nation that can raise $2 million. All right. And it's all right to go and have your church congregation raise it. That's nice. And your sorority to give a group donation. But there are 400 preachers, professionals, PhDs somewhere that can give $5,000 out of your excess. I saw cars I came up with. Either you faking the funk or I mean, it can't be both ways. You can't have on some of the, and I've moved around this country. I've been on the road 20 days. I know, been in all kinds of places, and I know we have something. Somebody has something somewhere. Not just black people either, but people of means and people who can. So, since we're here to raise money, you know, it's all right to talk about me and Sherelle, but look, let's be real. We're here to raise some money, right? So I want to begin now, and thought y'all tweeted, and that there's a way to quantify this over the next 30 minutes so we know how many people. I want to issue a challenge to every pastor and professional and doctor, and they don't have to be professional by way of education, because there's some brothers and sisters out there in vocation that have some money. So we need 400 people today to give, we need 399 people today to give $5,000. I'm starting with 5,000. That's the opening offer today. Yeah, that's the opening offering, $5,000, not from a group, they're from an individual. Sacrifice, and we need 399 other individuals. That's $2 million, right? And there are 400 million people in this country. There got to be 400 somewhere that can write a $5,000 check and won't miss it. That's right. Today, I'm talking to you. Yes. Amen. So, having said that, when we were making the decision, Sherelle had was graduating valedictorian. And she had all of these offers for different schools. Now, I won't call their name, that actually sent her a letter to come, but didn't. And I said, that's interesting. But there were some that did. And we got a call from Janetta Cole. And Janetta called us and called Sherelle and said, watch this now, my brother. I'm not so much interested in you coming to Bennett. Whatever you, but even if you don't, as a president of a college that's invested in helping young women particularly, I will mentor you. I will give you my context. Now that kind of stuck with us. Now I'll help you if you come to Bennett. I'd like you to come. And so she made that, and we thought about it. And then the problem with my children is they listen at my preaching too much. And they listen at what Rebecca teaches. And so we were talking, and one day Sherelle came in and she said, I think I want to go to Bennett. Now by this time we had some offers. And Bennett at that time couldn't offer a full ride. Because it was doing, some church. He didn't have it. And she said, I think I want to go to Bennett. So I asked, God has a way. Particularly if you have people, leaders that believe that. So in the meantime, Dr. Cole was talking to some folk. We had no idea. And when Sherelle and them came to campus, she was in the financial aid line to sign the loan papers. Her and that woman, they were in the financial aid line. I was home trying to figure out how we were going to pay the loan and other things, but I didn't come with them that day. And the story I heard was that President Cole sent a messenger over to the line and said a donor had just given 2 full scholarships for 2 students. And Sherelle was going to be one. And another person from New York was be another. And I'm thankful. In fact, that's one of the things I'm so honored, and my way my children honor me, all of them, is their willingness to see their gifts, their intellect as possibilities for service, right? And the day she said, how can Bennett recruit valedictorians if some of us who are female and women and black don't make the decision to go there? That's how we ended up at Bennett College.
So for you, Sherelle, you had your journey here, getting to this point. Now you're on your next journey in life. But when you look back, and people ask all the time, what does it mean to be a Bennett Bell?
One of the things that I think it means to be a Bennett Bell is just to be a woman of purpose.
Yes.
A woman of purpose. So my father mentioned Dr. Janetta Cole, and she was just a phenomenal leader on campus. And she would often hearken to another president, Dr. David Dallas Jones, who, when he would go around campus, he wouldn't ask folks what their job was going to be once they graduated. He wouldn't ask folks what their income, what kind of income they wanted to make. He said, what is your purpose, right? And so one of the reasons, my dad talks about me wanting to come here and, kind of as a valedictorian and come here and be of service, but really my mom and I visited Bennett during my senior year in school. And I remember coming onto campus, right? And every Bennett Bell who is a true Bennett Bell says they have this experience where you get to this campus and there's just something about this space. There's something about Bennett that just draws you to her, that really draws you to her. And I think that some of that was the legacy of Bennett Bells and past generations who had been a part of the civil rights movement, who had been instrumental in things like the 1960 sit-in movement. Actually, it was planned here on Bennett's campus. Bennett Bells will tell you all day, every day that the A&T floor may have sat down, but that sit-in movement was planned right here on this campus. And maybe it was also the draw from ancestors past and formerly enslaved individuals who started this college in the basement of a church, right? And so you hearken back to that legacy, and that history, that legacy just drew me. And to be a Bennett Bell is to continue on that and honor that legacy. It's to strive for excellence, right? I know so many Bennett Bells in my generation, generations before me, even now, who went on, once they finished Bennett, to go on to other institutions. I graduated from Harvard, but I tell people every day it was Bennett that gave me my start, and it was Bennett that made the difference so that I wasn't just getting a degree, right? I was getting a degree and using that Harvard degree to be a service, right? And so Bennett Bells, and there are Bennett Bells at Harvard now. There's a woman by the name of Darisha White. She's at the Harvard School of Education right now, formerly in foster care in California, came to Bennett. Bennett shaped her and molded her, and now she's this phenomenal woman walking in her purpose. That's what Bennett Bells do. That's who Bennett Bells are. We are Black women, women of color who come here are poured into, right? And then we take everything that is poured into us to try to make this world a better place and to try to use our gifts, our talents in so many different areas. And I'm grateful for that legacy, that history, and for the phenomenal Bennett women who just continue to carry on that legacy.
Follow-up question, you mentioned that when you stepped on campus, you just felt something different here.
Right, yeah.
And in the past, you mentioned, the college as sacred. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, and I've really, sacred. So much of this space, when you think about, there's a Maya Angelou poem called For Our Grandmothers, and in that poem, she says, you've tried to destroy me, and though daily I perish, I will not be moved. And when I think about that quote, I think about Black women, right? And how this world, how this society daily tries to destroy us in whether it's media, whether it's not giving us our due pay, whether it's the stressors that we experience on a day-to-day basis, the challenges, the barriers we experience because we are Black women. Everything, sometimes, it seems like everything in this society has been on our destruction, but yet we blossom. Yes. And we flourish, and we do it in spite of, right? And so when you have a space like Bennett that is literally dedicated to the uplift and the pouring into and the sowing into of Black women, that is sacred work. That's sacred work. When you think about, there are not many places in this world that are completely dedicated to the uplift and the upbuild of Black women. And so when you think about this place, along with a place like Spelman, these are sacred spaces. When I travel, I go to Brazil for my research. And I tell people, I said, I went to Harvard. Jewel pours into Black women. I think about my times in the chapel, right? One of the images in the chapel is this Black Madonna, right? And so on Bennett's campus, you have images of people who look like you, these phenomenal leaders, presidents, administrators who look like you. I would say, I can do just about anything, right? That's sacred work. And then on the college bell, to be just a part of that legacy.
Reverend Barber, can you talk about Bennett's role in the civil rights movement, and how would you compare that to what you're doing today when it comes to civil rights?
Well, I want to say a moment too about this issue of sacredness that's leading into that. Sometimes when we think sacred too, we think ancient, old, that which was done in the past. But sacred things live. Like a church communion is sacred because it has survived 2,000 years and continues. The word sacrifice is a sacred office. It's not just something you look back at, but it's something you live in, right? And that which is sacred has a place. It doesn't have to ask us. It has a place. It's a cutout place in the universe, right? And so part of what makes something sacred is not only the sacrifices of the past. If you are on, y'all got a way to let me know if folk are saying I meet the challenge, and keep putting it out there. There's a challenge that's gone out from this place for 400 people before the end of us today to say they will give $5,000. We're looking for $3.99, $3.99. Now, if they can't get a full 5, give something, but I know there are $3.99 out there, so I need y'all to keep pushing it. It had its beginning in freedmen and former slaves. but then we transition. But when we talk about black women, whether it is in civil rights history or biblical history, you cannot ignore. Pharaoh in the Bible was first challenged by the women. Two women, there was, before Moses, there was Shiphrah and Puah that challenged him. There was a woman named Deborah in the scripture who would not allow the nation to die. She had one watch called, get up. That's what she went around saying to everybody, get up and do something, right? In Christian faith, it is, you know, there are, when we look at Mary, there is no Christ's birth without Mary. There is no announcement of resurrection without Mary Magdalene. Women, right? There is no sit-in movement and SNCC without Ella, who sat in the room not to tell the young folk what to do, but to protect them from those that would tell them, so that they could have a level of freedom in the development of their ideas and their radicalness, right? Before Dr. King ever came to Montgomery, the women had been organizing in Montgomery 30 years. 30 years. And Rosa Parks was not some little quiet Gentile woman. You need to read The Radical Life of Rosa Parks. That is just a farce that somebody made up. And even when she sat down strategically. There's a book that says she sat down on the day of the week that didn't give time for the preachers to pray themselves out of the mood. I mean, she sat down, and then they had the meeting, and then the women already had 25,000 flyers, and if anybody, just think for a second, with those old mimeograph machines, there's no way in the world that they produced 25,000 flyers that night after she said, that just didn't happen like that. Somebody already had those flyers. Now they may not tell it because black sisters can keep stuff. You don't know, they can keep what they want to keep. And you won't ever know what happened, right? And nobody's ever told it, but I just got a sneaky suspicion. So when we think about Bennett today, let's think for a minute Bennett before. You know, we often go to 1960 and that piece, but I want to ask Bennett to claim another part of your history and live into it now. I think one of the uniquenesses when you all rise from this is to intentionally say that we will train activist academics. I think if you don't do that, you got to cut out your sacred space, right? And I remember there was a time in Bennett history that one of the presidents thought your sacred space was the women wearing gloves, and it almost tore this college apart. Yeah, I'm talking about that too. They thought that was the purpose of it. The sisters would wear the gloves and it had a certain kind of curfews and that the women had a certain place. But prior to that, the sister president understood. What was her name? Who was her name? Call the name. All right. She understood as an activist president that the sacred space of Bennett was for the women not just to be prissy, but to be powerful. And so when they dressed up in their heels and their pearls, it was to go to work. They did that because they were serious. They were not coming to Bennett to stand away from the struggle, but to stand in the struggle as women, right? So way before 60s, in 1937. Now that's some dangerous time because that's during the Great Depression, the New Deal, 1937. Say that with me, 37. 37. Bennett Bells took on the system in Greensboro over how women were being treated at the theater. Now watch this. They took it so seriously. And there was a male president at that time, Dr. Jones. And Dr. Jones was visited by the FBI. And they told him, you must stop these women. Like Pharaoh told those women, you must stop these women. And he investigated this college for possible leftist and communist influence. And Dr. Jones said, no.
All right.
This is years before Dr. King. almost 20-some years before Montgomery. And that brother said to the FBI, you will not shut down these sisters. That's sacred. And the question is, Madam President and others, as we go forward, when we come up out of this, where do we need to loose these sisters today? What movement does Bennett need to be associated with today? So that there will always be activists, foundations, and others that will give to this university. Yes, because of the academics, but because they also know that here will be a group of sisters who will not merely recite history, but make history again. Are there any issues? Well, there are 140 million poor and low wealth people in America right now, and the majority of them are women and children. Should that be a Bennett focus? There are 62 million people who make less than a living wage. We lock people up for fighting for 15, while 400 families make an average of $97,000 an hour. There are 37 million people without health care, even with the Affordable Care Act. Should health care be on the leading edge of what Bennett women are about, right? There are about 1.5 million people, black people of color, in prison. Resegregation of our public schools is happening faster than it did in the 1970s. Right now, you know. 4 million families get up every morning and can buy unleaded gas and can't buy unleaded water, not just in Flint. Right here in North Carolina, there are over 2 million poor people in North Carolina. There are nearly a million people without health care. So that's the movement, Poor People's Campaign, National Call for Moral Revival, with all of these clear issues. We have less voting rights today than we had August 6, 1965, after the passing of the Voters' Rights. You have a senator here who is in an unconstitutionally constituted legislature.
That's right. All right.
Should this senator be able to count on Bennett whenever she says, I got a problem? Should she be able to count that the sisters, like they did in 37, will come? Because here is the thing. If they came in 37 and we won't come in 2019, we dishonor that legacy. Because they came in with more pressure. You hear what I'm saying? There's no reason for us to be scared today. Now there was reason for them to be scared. Because it would bring the FBI down. You could get shot for it. You could get hung. In 1937, black women could get raped anytime. Just walking down the street. And yet those sisters put those pumps on back then, whatever they were. They got their best Sunday best. And they stood up. And then the next president came along and she said, I am an activist president. And when the other places, this is one of the shameful parts of our history. NCCU, I went there, I love it. Didn't open their doors. T didn't open their doors. When Salem, I'm not knocking, I'm just talking history. But it was a woman that said to Dr. King, come on over here.
All right.
And he preached a realistic vision, a realistic understanding of racism from yonder pulpit on the college campus of this college.
All right.
If they did that then I'm just saying, part of Bennett's ongoing life must be to answer this question. What kind of activist college will you be now? Because that's how you were born.
Yes.
Sherelle, do you feel that there is maybe a disconnect with society and the importance of HBCUs and their role?
Can you clarify the question a bit?
So we were getting a question of what strategies, should HBCUs employ going forward to make sure that, they're not in situations where we are financially.
Let me ask you a question. Did that person get some money? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. Okay, you gave some money. Well, I need to know that now, because I want to know. I thought it was somebody online. Praise the Lord. Because I was going to answer them, because you ask questions and don't get no money. That's why we in this. But go ahead. Now, I'm okay now.
I think I'll follow up on my father. We have to think about, the historically black colleges as having had started kind of from behind, right? So I can say, I went to Harvard University, and Harvard University benefited from the slave trade, right? Made money and used that were built on the backs of our ancestors to flourish and to thrive. And now they have endowed, disconnect that kind of history and legacy of inequality when we're talking about historically black colleges and universities in terms of the financial spaces we're in. Because when we're given the resources, we produce the product. Dr. Janetta Cole used to say, the proof is in the pudding, right? Bennett College used to be one of the largest producers of MDs in the country, of black women MDs, of scholars, et cetera. So when you invest in women, right, you have the resources to move forward. We can attract the top scholars to come teach our students. We can build global programs and activism and scholarship. And so I don't think if the question should be, is there a disconnect? I think more so is like, how do we move forward in equitably investing in places like Bennett? Because it's right now the playing field is not equal, right? And so how do we do that so that this place can not only survive, but it can thrive and produce the scholars and the activists and the doctors and the lawyers and the entrepreneurs and the business folks that will then go out and change this world.
How many of you know that HBCUs, when they were granted the right to exist, were then limited? I mean, let's think about that. You birth something and then say it can only grow so much. By design. I mean, you can never compare a HBCU, particularly a private one, but an HBCU with what you see with others, because as Julian Bond used to say, America spelled backwards is I am race. Now I went to Duke as well, for what's on the campus of Duke. First of all, the founders are buried under the chapel, so you can't ever destroy the campus because it's technically a grave site. Mr. Duke said that back in his day, by the way, that chapel was built by a black man who couldn't tell it. And he had the design to put Robert E. Lee statues up there. And Mr. Duke is under there and used to say if a black man ever stood in the pulpit of Duke University's chapel, he would turn over his grave. So when I preached there, I intentionally preach a little longer because I really want to see that. And Sherelle said something that I don't want people to miss. You have universities who have endowments today that grew out of the slave trade. Right? Black colleges were told they couldn't own but so much land. I mean, you really, it's a miracle that you're even here. Now, having understood that, however, the challenge, I think, for us here is to say, if our foreparents did that much with less, that's why I'm challenging this 399 and some other, because they did more with less. So it's hard for us to complain too much. Instead, we must find out what we must do with more. They had to have secret meetings to raise money like this. They didn't have an anchor from China 2. Right? Am I right? So we do have to recognize we have more, but we always have to remember that the design that HBCUs that started out as simple normal schools, just to get people a basic education, when they began to grow, two things came at them. One, they were limited and landlocked by law. In other words, that's like saying to a child, you can be born, but you can only grow to be 10 years old. So they were stunted from the beginning. And then you heard me say, when these colleges took their rightful place in the civil rights movement, oftentimes they were, it took Eleanor Roosevelt coming down here. It took a white woman coming down here to make them leave Bennett alone. Because the goal was to destroy it in 1937. Because of the fear of what an educated, clear thinking, justice-loving black woman will do. What she will do. Right? So, thank you.
You talk about the women and their roles and what they're doing after school. Sherelle, just tell us a little bit about some of your friends, your colleagues, what they're doing now after graduating.
Right. So I'm in the generation of Dr. Janetta B. Cole. And I really, and then followed by Dr. Julianne Malveaux. And, I look out and see kind of some of the phenomenal things that my Bennett sisters are doing. So I have my line sister, my sorority sister, Lori Sherman, out in Indiana, who went on to law school in one of the most prestigious firms in Evansville, Indiana, and is doing a phenomenal job in her local community, really raising. She ran for public office there, and just took all that she learned at Bennett and just poured it into what she's doing there. Erica Judge, who was right? They're well connected. And then, like I said, the generations after me. I'm privileged to graduate just in 2018, Isaac Bateman, who's in the back of the room. I lift her because some people compared her and myself when she was here. So when I was a student, SGA president, we did marches to the polls, Bennett bells or voting bells, and folks like her, students like her have taken up that mantle, and now she's working with me on the short documentary we're doing about Marielle Franco. And so, you just have so many countless other folks. I can't name them all. Bennett bells, my Bennett sisters, please forgive me for not calling your name, but one of the things that I know is that we take this education and we take it and we run with it. Once we get it. And I think that's another reason why we have to invest in Bennett. We have to invest in Bennett because there's so much work to be done, and so many Bennett Bells who are doing just phenomenal things in this country and around the world.
Now this may be a rhetorical question of what we need to maybe ask ourselves, but we have one other question here in the audience addressed to you, Sherelle. Okay. How will Bennett College in the future prepare young women to be advocates for economic and social justice in their communities?
I think it's actually, you can prepare students across disciplines to do this work, right? I was a bio major. I was a biology major, scientist. You got biology majors in the room? And typically you go do a biology major, you go to medical school, you might be a doctor, you might go and get your PhD and do kind of hard sciences. And you typically don't put biology with social activism. But because of the education, the very well-rounded education I got here at Bennett, I could be a biology major I study epidemiology, I do statistics, and I do that hard work. But because of the education I got here that was well-rounded, where I was also taking sociology classes, political science classes that taught me about this kind of activism. I see myself as a scholar activist who uses epidemiology and who uses biostatistics to make the invisible visible. That's what I say. I use data to make the invisible visible about racism and how racism is embodied and comes out in terms of health inequalities, right? So I think that the way you do that is you allow across disciplines, right? Whether you're a biology major, whether you're political science, if you're in communications, and then how do you take that foundation in those different disciplines and apply it to the real world challenges that we have today, right? And so you can do that. I mean, we can do that here at Bennett, where we're training folks to be rigorous scholars in whatever discipline they are. But then how do you take that rigorous scholarship and apply it to challenges in our world? And I think the other piece is that we're going to really have to invest in technology. That's where schools are going now. Online programs where, for example, if we had an online class that I taught, I could teach a class and it be online, and then students would have access to that for years and years to come because we're using technology to be able to do that, right? And so really thinking about what are the kind of forward-thinking practices in education, and then using that and shifting that so that then students are equipped to be rigorous, rigorous in their discipline, but also, again, being active in their community and applying those skills to real world problems.
You know, that's an interesting question, and I want to take a short stab at it. If y'all don't mind, I've been traveling 20 days, so I'm just standing up on this knee some. You know, Bob Moses was a mathematician who actually helped lead much of the civil rights movement, particularly down the South. If you check the academic backgrounds of many of the civil rights leaders and others, they didn't major in activism. Ain't no major for activism. Right? What an institution can do, though, is number one, when a student comes to an institution like this, to make sure at the very beginning, not in a cursory way, they know where they are. They know the history. Until that history is embedded on the hard drive of their mind and their spirit. Number two, that they are made conscious of the world around them. Yes. So that this campus does not become a quarantine from the reality of the world, but a place where you face the realities and examine them. And out of that, develop deep consciousness. And then, as you said, there's rigorous study, because I often say in activism, the worst thing you can be is loud and wrong. Now, I know there are two doctors. I want to take mine back, not for bragging reasons, but because as I look through history, those who gave, even if they didn't do formal education, there is not one person who led and helped serve movement that did not do serious study. Whether it was Malcolm studying the jail, or whether it was Fannie Lou Hamer studying, she didn't go to school, but she knew the issue of poverty and racism. Deep, deep, deep preparation, right? So we need scholars. Right now, for instance, we're writing a budget called the Poor People's Moral Budget to challenge the lie that people say we don't have the resources for everybody to have health care and for everybody to have a living wage. You can't just say that. You have to be able to prove it, because the first thing they're going to say when you start talking about, we don't have the money. And then, you know, and if people get away with that by you not being able to say, well, wait a minute, actually, we have this sister that majored in econ at Bennett and also went and got a PhD in econ at Harvard, and she has actually developed a paper. See, that's activism. Because those in the street need footnotes. See, every speech I do is footnoted. Sherelle will tell you, I call up and say, look, I got to do something on health. I need this, and this. That's a form of activism. Dr. King was out with this and thing, but don't forget Mary Wright Edelman. who wrote the policies for the Poor People's Campaign. If we're going to talk about how to address not 140 million poor no welfare, when I just called those figures, I didn't call those figures out of blue. We had a group of economists and activists and people and scholars and theologians get in a room and write something called The Souls of Poor Folk, Auditing America 50 Years After the original Poor People's Campaign. That's academics.
Yeah.
And deep commitment to empirical data. And so I say that make sure students know that deep history. Make sure this is a place of, it struck me that Sherelle, of what you quoted, of all the things about you quoted that Luke 4, that's on the bell. Whatever's on this campus, students need to know why. Isn't there something on that? Isn't some of that up there too, because there was a bell who stood up to the Klan and was shot and killed right here in Greensboro on TV? There's not a student that should come through this school that doesn't have to look at that tape in their freshman orientation and read this history so that they develop a kind of history consciousness that will inform their present and their future. The activism will come. See, whether you major in biology or physics or sociology, but if you major in all those things and get A's and have no consciousness, one of the things lastly I love about some of the things Sherelle tells me about the Bennett sisters is, y'all, now back in the day, my wife's here, but I'm gonna tell her, back in the day, we wanted to get to Bennett when we wanted the real girlfriend, right? My wife almost came to Bennett. We wanted to get over here to Bennett now, because you didn't play with Bennett sisters. And we said, them some fine sisters, but they were tough. You might get to hold hands. You might. After the third date or fourth date, and that would be one date a month, But I say that to say that there is this sense, this seriousness about the work, and there is this power when folk have deep consciousness. And one of the things I love about Bennett sisters, I watched Andrea Harris. I used to watch her in meetings, and Andrea would come in and she had that pantsuit on, or sometimes she had that 3/4 dress on and her little pumps, and she walked in there, the shortest thing in the room, and she had that half fig, but then she put them glasses down on her nose, and when the meeting started, she knew how to get in the nitty-gritty. In other words, she came in with the presence of this pristine woman, but she never lost the grittiness and the deal with the grittiness. My daughter, Harvard, but she's over there in the trenches in Brazil. The sister that you said got the law degree, but she's in the trenches. The sister that graduated from Valedictorian, she's a doctor, but down in the South. She could be somewhere, but she's in Georgia, in the trenches. See, what we need are people who are deep academicians who don't become so stuck up that they have no usefulness in the world. That they can get right down there with the people and bring their gifts to the people. And that's been a gift that Bennett has given to the world, and we hope will continue to give.
And I want to speak on just some personal opportunities that I had while I was a student at Bennett. My first trip to Brazil was because of that woman right there, Reverend Dr. Natalie McClain, who suggested that I go attend the World Social Forum in Brazil to talk about poverty, economic inequality. And my father did not want me to go. He actually, the story goes, I called Dad, I said, Daddy, I got this opportunity. Reverend McClain has nominated me to go to the World Social Forum. It's going to be in Porto Alegre, Brazil. I was a sophomore, and I was so excited because I was going to be my first trip out of the country. And my dad point blank said, no, you're not going. And I said, well, I'm 20 years old and I can do I said, yes, I am. And I was adamant about that thing because what it was going to be 60 individuals from all around the world who were going to be coming together to talk about social justice issues. And so so that night I hung up the phone on her. I said, I'm going, I don't know what, I'm 20.
She snuck out of the country.
No.
But the issue was the fit. What I'm trying to say, it wasn't just a not going.
No.
I knew Brazil.
Yes.
I knew women were being snatched up, and I knew she wasn't going to a cute conference. This was a conference that was going to be challenging America's politics.
Right.
So, but we all have those fears as parents. But then we have to say.
And so he calls me the next morning, and he said, I spoke to the Lord.
Yeah, that's right.
And I believe that actually. I believe that he said, I spoke to the Lord, and he said, I have to let you go. And so when I went to Brazil, that was 13, almost 14 years ago. And I went back in 2000 this past year and had that experience with activists. I was in a room in Casa das Pretas in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with Black women activists. And the place was called Casa das Pretas, Black Women's House. And the reason I knew how significant and sacred that space was because I had gone to Bennett. And because Bennett had me attuned to the fact that I needed to be in this space with these women at an event called Young Black Women Moving Power Structures, right? And so although I had gone there as a scholar doing research on in the National School of Public Health, I found my way to the Black women, the activists who were in the trenches and doing that work on the ground. And it was so important because Bennett was the place where I got that consciousness, right? And I know there are opportunities for Bennett Bells now that they go abroad in South Africa and other places to do this work, and they get that consciousness, and we need to continue that. Continue to build and create opportunities for women to see the world, to experience the world, because then we take that, like my father has said, we take that and then use our different disciplines to address these issues. And so Bennett, I will tell people all the time, Bennett was the place, you can pay for an education, right? You can pay to get a degree in biology, physics, economics, business, whatever, but you can't pay for, it is a priceless thing to have a space where you can develop as a global citizen, where you can really flourish and learn about the activism of the past and be engaged in the activism of the present. There's so many Bennett Bells. When I had graduated, but Bennett Bells were involved in the Gen 6. I know that folks here are now, some in the Black Lives Matter movement. Bennett Bells continue to take that history, that legacy of what we learned about our Bennett sisters from times past, and we're using it to make our difference and make our mark on the world today. And I'm so proud to be a part of that legacy.
By the way, y'all getting any reports on who's the 399 is now? Y'all don't have any way of knowing if folks tweet in that you're gonna be one of the 399 that will get $5,000 today. $5,000 today. We need $2 million. All my Twitter friends, John Legend, all of y'all, come on and tweet and let us know. Send a note right now. And there's some 5,000s in this room. Y'all just trying to act like you don't have it, or you maybe already given it. But if you gave 2,500, give 2,500 more. Some of y'all can do that from your interest, and you'll still be all right. Don't play with me. I know y'all didn't. I'm saying it right now. But the last kind of thing. Is I was reading in the history, the VESPA programs, and one of the things, the mandatory, and one of the things that is starting to be interesting to me as I travel around the country is how other universities are taking what we used to do. And I want to help figure out a way, and I don't think it should be a thing where all of us we have to charge. I think there ought to be a way that you could set up a 12-minute series. Mandatory students be there. Every class they have to report on you, but there's conscious building. Now you take, for instance, I'm a little old country boy from down in eastern North Carolina, a little place called Martin County, Washington County. I got a call, Andrea, from St. John University. Washington, I'm gonna give you an idea. This could be done right here. And they said, will you come and serve as the social justice chair of the department? Now, when I got the piece, I said, well, I can't serve as a chair of the department. I'm out here in the street. I dismissed it. because I'm saying I'm thinking it was like applied. So they called me back. The Jesuit, the priest called me back. The Jesuits. He said, no, you understand what we're saying? We have created a chair of a department where the only responsibility you have is to be on campus 4 times a year to shed consciousness. I said, what you say? He said, yeah. He said, you get to design it. You've got 3 times. You can come on campus, you get to use everything in our library, but 3 times we have a gathering, and it's mandatory that a certain disciplines of the students there have to attend is open to the public. I got so excited, I said, I'll do 4. You know, I get to pick the topics, I get to do deep dive lecturing and interaction. And I asked him, I said, why y'all do this? He said, because every year we choose somebody to do this because we cannot just train people academically who do not know the world around them and have a consciousness about that. I believe as we move in the future, you see, we need to not only have chapel, but to figure out a way to do that deliberate kind of conscious building, like we used to do with the Vespers, when whoever were the quote, quote leaders, they did tours to all the HBCUs. You know, whether it was Mary McLeod, Bethune, or whoever it was. And it was an obligation that they come on campus. And it don't just have to be black people. Obligation that they come on campus, and it was mandatory that the students had to be there as a part of their graduation. And you can make some stuff a part of folks' graduation. You have to get 15 hours of going. And they might not like it at first, you see, but it's like, you know, maybe some of us didn't, but what we end up learning from that. So how do we creatively do this? That's what I want to kind of put on the table, because in this moment we're in right now, one of the worst things we can have, I think, and you know, I've been to Central, Duke, Drew, and MIT, and done lectures all over Harvard, all those places. But one of the worst things I think you can be right now in this moment is academically trained but asleep.
All right.
You know, just sleep, consciously, just asleep. Right. And think that your only problem and the only thing we face is one president. And we don't understand really the broad sweep of what's happening, and that right now, we're going through a 3rd Reconstruction. And Bennett was born in the 1st Reconstruction.
All right.
You understand? This college was born in the 1st Reconstruction, had a major role in the 2nd Reconstruction, that's the Civil Rights Movement, and must have a role in the 3rd Reconstruction.
And I think that really is just the perfect way to end today's conversation. Thank you so much, Reverend Barber and Dr.
No, you ain't going.
All right, now Andrea Harris is going to join us for some closing remarks.
Well, Sherelle and Dr. Barber, let's give them another hand. And let's give a hand to Mrs. Barber as well. You know, when I listen to them, I'm just so proud. You know, I'm old enough to have been around when the other Dr. Barber, was moving around organizing, and he would bring this young man with him, folks called Billy Barber, right? And we'd be out there organizing health fairs around Eastern North Carolina. So I'm not surprised that he is who he is, just because of who his family was and what they were involved in. You know, but I think it's so timely that they are both here. Because sometimes it's, Madam Mayor back there, raise your hand, because I like bragging about black people. You know, sometimes in Greensboro, when they talk about the higher education, they often talk about the tiny college. Y'all seen them writing in the newspaper, make reference to the tiny college. You seen that? And so I just loved it when both Sherelle and Dr. Barber called this a sacred place. A sacred space, but a sacred past, a sacred present, and a sacred future.
That's right.
You know, sometimes people, we can reflect on that new Sankofa bird that looks back to figure out how to go forward. But then sometimes we can talk about that bird called the phoenix.
That
rising out of the ashes. You know, but like a black woman, tell folks, you know, we know what the evidence, what faith is. The substance of, the faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And like your friend Jim Wallace said, hope is believing in spite of the evidence. And that's what my people have always done. Always done. So I do see this as a third reconstruction. And so some in the community here in Greensboro might feel like, oh, maybe that tiny college needs to go merge with somebody. Maybe that tiny college needs to figure out how to just gradually, you know, fold up. But as a black woman, I know what it's like to see life.
Yes.
When you have nothing.
That's right.
To build it and make it grow, right? And you can't look at all these sisters and look at the impact of this college and think we just don't sit down and do nothing.
That's right.
Sit down and do absolutely nothing. And so I want to thank you all, because sometimes we just need to be reminded of how far we've come, the impact we have, where the young women are, and Sherelle is one among many.
That's right. That's
but let us also let her know how proud we are of her. So at one point, you know, not long ago, we had 0. Isn't that right, Dr. Dawkins, in terms of fundraising? Then it went up a little bit. Then folks kept saying, why isn't it moving? Then it moved a little bit more. Then it got to be $1 million. And somebody said, it's staying there too long. Then it went up to 1.5 and it got to 1.6. Is that right? They've been hanging around there too long, Dr. Dawkins. We got to move this needle. And then the day you tell us we had $3 million.
Yes.
And so, you know what? I still believe that hope is believing in spite of the evidence. And Bennett women have always, Bennett had always come through. So I want to thank all of you that are here. I am not a minister, so we didn't ask Reverend Barber to bring some buckets and some baskets, but hopefully on your way out, you got something back there?
That's right.
I want you to drop something in the bucket on your way out of the door. I don't really care what it is. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You know, sometimes you go to church and when people raising money, they'll say, here's what I'm going to give to get you excited, right? So I wanted the Deltas in here to feel bad.
That's right.
We raised more than the AKA. And I want all the Qs and the Kappas to feel bad that I do the alphas. I want the bootleg to come across. And all you church people, I want y'all to outdo whether it's Mount Zion or New Zion or any other kind of Zion. You know, outdo the Presbyterians, so y'all Baptists outdo somebody else. But let us keep this spirit of moving up and going forward and maintaining this as a sacred place for the future. Let us keep that going. And we thank you to the faculty and the staff and others. We thank you for your hard work, because we get emails late at night, calls early in the morning. You know, we had no choice but to learn how to text. And that's the only way we communicate with folks these days. So I thank you, and I want to ask that Reverend Natalie McLean come forward and close us out. Thank you all.
Please join hands for your eyes. We go to God in prayer. Dear Lord, did not our hearts burn as your son and your daughter shared among us? Your word encourages us to cast our bread upon the waters, knowing that we will find it in many days. Lord, we bless you for the character and the heart lived out in your servants as they use your gifts for your glory in this world. We are beneficiaries of your grace poured out through your servants, and we too are committed to continue the sacred work of holistically educating your daughters, which in turn educates a whole nation. May we ever take this great trust very seriously and never take it or you for granted. Now, Lord, we thank you for every giver. We thank you for every gift. And we ask that you would just help us to be faithful in all that you have in store for your resources on behalf of your daughters. And now may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you and give you great joy and peace. Amen.
Amen.